I'm John O'Donnell. I'm a principal solution architect here. I've been in AWS about 5.5 years, so that's an eternity in AWS terms, but I love every day of it, so it's great. I'm the migration modernization lead for the Northeast. Just some real quick background is going way back in the day, I actually led the first big pharma GlaxoSmithKline move to the precursor of Azure and Office 365, basically building the business case, building the architecture, and getting 140,000 users moved over to that platform. It literally was we were the first big company in the Microsoft cloud back in the day. And when I also here at AWS, I led the transformation of Vanguard, which is a local financial services company you may have heard of, right? From exclusively on-premise to doing pretty much everything in the cloud. And one of the efforts was so I'm not taking full credit for it, but was moving some of their key financial platforms in AWS, and I was highlighted at one of our reInvent conferences. And again, working with customers to migrate and modernize today. So with that, Murali, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Thank you, John. I'm Murali Shankar. I'm a solution architect at AWS. I'm here with AWS for a year plus, and industry for 23 plus years. My specialized area is migration and modernization. Prior to this job, I was on data center migration, cloud adoption, migration, and modernization. In past 6 years, I've been mostly focusing on AWS and AWS migration. Current job, I help my customers to adopt cloud, modernize their applications, and I work with John on a lot of migration and modernization initiative that we run for our customers. With that, John, I will share my screen and hand it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. And in spite of working with me, he still attends and presents an angel meet. So I'm joking, right? But Murali and I have some interesting stories that we could share with you guys over a beer sometime. So I'm seeing like a partial your desktop now, Murali, just so you know.
Yeah, I'm going to stop. I have some issue here. Just give me one second to fix it.
Well, I'll jump in. I mean, you don't need to lead the slide. So basically, while we're kind of messing with that, just want to cover basically there's the pillars of if you work with AWS, you work with there you go. I'm seeing the deck now, part of it at least. If you work with AWS, there's pillars like our well-architected framework, our CAF, right? So there's pillars of modernization. We look at it, and again, technical and architecture, people and process, and governance at scale. Not seeing the deck, Murali. I'm seeing your video now. So, do you want me to share? Is it better for me to share? Or?
Yeah. Do you mind sharing? Some reason the sharing got.
Sometimes it's a little bit tricky. I think you're using a Mac when you set up the security provisions. We can just start right at the beginning, John.
Okay.
Why don't we do that, because I want to record this as well. So I'm going to edit out these little technical glitches and then have a nice clean video at the end.
Okay.
Why don't you share, John? There is some issue on the sharing side. Why don't you share and then I will.
I got it. We good. This is all part of the fun, right? So share. Okay, hold on. Screen one, share. Do you see my beautiful beach steps? There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go, sorry, Ron, I'm going to go back to, we'll start over again. So apologize, everyone who listened to me twice. So Ron, I'll go 3, 2. So 3, 2. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is John O'Donnell. I'm a principal solution architect here at AWS. Been here about 5 years, and my specialty area is migration modernization. And I do want to say a word of thanks for everyone who's presented here today. It's this truly demonstrates the Amazon learning leadership principle of learning and be curious, right? So every time I come here, and Ron, I can't remember how many times Ron has brought me here and invited me as a speaker. Every single time I'm learning so much, and just seeing the progress that we're making, our partner solutions are making, absolutely amazing. So bit of a background again, I led one of the first big pharma, actually the first big pharma move to the cloud, to the precursor of Microsoft Azure and Office 365 a very long time ago. I helped Vanguard, the company, move from on-prem into AWS in a very big way, where they were actually featured at the keynote with Werner Vogels at reInvent a few years back, and just working with customers today on migrating and modernizing. So with that, I'm going to hand it to my colleague Murali for him to do an intro.
Thank you, John. This is Murali Shankar. I'm with AWS for past 1 year plus. In the industry for 23 plus years. I focus on mostly cloud migration and modernization, being part of many large migration. I work with John very closely for many of our cloud customers on the migration and modernization. So with that, John, we'll rightly jump into the presentation and we'll go from there.
Excellent. Thank you. Yep. So, so I'm going to cover some of the theory, and then Murali's going to get into some more of the actual practical, the serverless and the practical implementations of modernization. But essentially, as you see here, there's pillars of modernizations: tech, people, process, governance, and scale. They're all obviously important, but I think really the key is, I come from the legacy world. I've worked on mainframes. I've worked on, I go back to the Windows NT days, right? There's a lot of legacy stuff out there, and you can't modernize all of it, but I think the goal is to really pick, the incrementally modernizing applications. So really thinking about what applications provide value to you, to your customers, right? Either internal or external, right? What technology you're going to use, who the people, the process, and the building the culture to effectively modernize is critical, right? And I'll tell you, the hardest part is number 2, because technology is easy. Building governance is relatively less difficult, but people and process is really the area where you really need to kind of think about changing how you operate. And of course, governance and scale automation, automating things, having repeatability is critical to success in modernization. So there's some patterns here. Again, I think you guys, if you've seen other of my presentations, you've seen this before. If you're looking to move your data center to the cloud, these are some rough numbers, can go up or down, but based about 60% of your stuff, you can really lift and shift, as it were, just kind of move it from all AWS using tools like Haiku, right, into AWS, right? Looking at kind of modernizing applications, that tends to be a smaller number because it's a higher effort, and I'll show you some of those slides later, but it's also a higher value, right? Customers move 10 to 30% of their applications in the modern platforms as they're making the move, maybe before, maybe after, but you tend to have a hybrid mixture of legacy and modern, even for quite some time after you move to AWS. From a budget perspective, very easy. We have tooling for both to kind of give you estimates to say, what's this going to cost me in a year, 3 years, et cetera. So again, something to think about, but these are general patterns that we're seeing out there in the real world. So the economic value as a former accountant, right, who went into IT, this is important to me, right? So, just generally going from on-prem and AWS, lift and shift, nothing really changes. Tends to have a cost savings, right? I can't, 20%, 10, 20%. It's great because there's money in your pocket that you can then plow back into modernization, right? As you go through this slide, as you go to just pure lift and shift, I'm going to right size it. I'm going to start using maybe some open source stuff, moving to managed services, and then continuing it to serverless, right? As you can see, the price continues to drop, but the level of modernization continues to increase, right? When you go from legacy systems to serverless systems, we're seeing customers are seeing 60, 80% savings, doing the same thing with, say, something like Lambda, which Murali is going to cover, but just incredible savings and incredible value. So, what to do with what? Again, I won't, do this. The easiest way to modernize is to change your portfolio is to retire things, move them to SaaS, right? Those are pretty straightforward. And we're going to cover today is the modernization, which is refactoring, replatforming. But you have many options I've covered before to lift and shift all of our different options. But we're going to focus again on modernization. And then, here's a few things here. I would say, business. You want to modernize for business reasons primarily, as well as technical reasons. But when I was working with large financial services company, they had some challenges from cloud native, kind of these born in the cloud, digital native competitors who were appealing to the millennial market. We went in a period of 3 to 6 months, build an entirely new cloud platform for them to appeal to that marketing, leveraging machine learning. Absolutely amazing. And they they got millions of people signed up for the service within several weeks. So great way to work with serverless applications, modern applications, and then being different in the market. Real estate company they worked with, they had a lot of scale issues. Customers were complaining that things were taking too long when they're doing reports, right? Moving that to the serverless, infinite scale, right? And instead of taking, again, hours to run reports, they were doing it in minutes, right? So again, just, critical elements there. And I would say like performance and scale on the right-hand side. Old code needs lots of babysitting, right? It needs lots of rebooting and watching and memory management, things like that. With modern architectures, that becomes, well, something you need to understand, not something that you're constantly, worrying about. So here's a roadmap. So the typical roadmap begins with a rapid migration, as I've explained before in the past, right? And that's down here. So like we're gonna do minimal change to some sort of minor change with that, and then work up into what's called cloud native, right? If you're building something brand new, if you're greenfield, you got nothing to change, I would go right to modern, right to serverless, right to all the new technologies, right? It tends to be a journey, as Ron mentioned about tech debt earlier, right? I need to get there, but I can't do it overnight. And frankly, sometimes there's stuff that's never going to get changed. It just, no one knows about. The guy who wrote the code, retired 30 years ago. Nobody knows. So there's things that are going to stay there. But again, your goal is to go from here to here as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So again, in summary, and we'll get to the interesting part next with Murali, but efficiency, right? So again, when you're running things on premise, everything's your problem. I run on data centers with thousands of servers. I got that call, like you guys, probably some of you on the call, I get the call at 2 a.m, like this isn't responding. It's not fun, right? So, moving to the cloud has the benefits, right? Once you move to like EC2, a VMware, VM type of approach, EC2 or VMware on the cloud, less things, more things that we handle, right? So that shared responsibility that was mentioned a little bit earlier in another Haiku presentation. Some are your problems, some of our problems, right? And as you move further to the right, as you see orange is good, you still have responsibilities. Security is a shared responsibility. It's always something we help you with, but it's also, your responsibility. But all these things, all these integrations, software installation, provisioning, we handle that, right? That's something that we offer to you to take advantage of. You got to write some code, right? Or have a partner write you some code, right? So it's super efficient. It's super fast. It's definitely the way that if I was building applications today, I would go with. I'm working with a large healthcare company who is re-architecting their entire platform into serverless technologies. It's a lot of work, yeah, but they're going from things that barely can function into like a highly functional architecture. So anyway, this is pretty much the wave of the future. The way of the future. It's actually the way people are doing things today. And I highly encourage you to kind of learn more about it. Again, feel free to reach out to me, Murali, whatever about that. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Murali, where he's going to jump into kind of some of the practical considerations of serverless. So thank you.
Thank you, John. So in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about serverless, what we mean by serverless, the benefits, why should you consider serverless as one of your modernization path. Finally, we look at a real case study that we have implemented for one of our retail customers. So what is serverless? In AWS view, serverless has 4 primary characteristics. The number 1, no infrastructure to provision or you to manage. Customer do not need to worry about managing infrastructure ever in the serverless world. You focus on that differentiates that your business, that is the application development and management. The second is automatic scaling. So the AWS manages the scaling behavior for you. Based on the number of events or the traffic that comes in, the services will scale up or scale down. The third is pay for your value, which John touched base a little bit earlier. In the serverless world, you are not paying for any ideal resources. You only pay for the time they work. That's the main advantage. And the fourth one, the lastly, highly available and secure. From a serverless services, AWS manages the fault tolerance, high availability of the infrastructure, and AWS also manages security of the serverless resources. Again, this goes back to John's point earlier. Security is a shared responsibility, but the backend hardware, the software that we provision, we manage the security of that. Next slide, please. With that, let's look at some characteristics of serverless. The one thing that's common across serverless application is that they follow the design of internet and the web. That is, small pieces, loosely joined or loosely coupled. All of these applications are modular in nature, composed from multiple AWS services and customer developed components. We want to make it easy to build new application and functionality with loosely coupled with other components, which we will look at in a minute. And for example, what you are seeing here on the screen, especially on the right side of the screen, is a portion of an architecture for an amusement park. And the top, you will see there is a wait time service that publishes to an SNS topic with the Lambda subscriber. And additionally, in the bottom, you see there are two API endpoints which proxy the request to Lambda, which in turn perform other integration. As you see, we are so focused on delivering a lot of integration in Lambda. So does in other serverless services like even bridge, API gateways, and step functions. And it's often start with API. Most of the managed serverless applications, we start on the API as a front door to the application. Often events or messages that are the communication system in the backend all coordinate with workflows. Okay. So as you see here, the wait time service, that public information about the wait time for a specific rights on SNS topic. We have a Lambda function that subscribes to that SNS topic, and the information is persisted into a DynamoDB table. Beneath that, you see two API endpoints which invoke a Lambda function. The first one, the one in the middle, one of them is performing operation into the same data store, which is our DynamoDB table. The other one is uploading photos to an S3. S3 stands for Amazon Simple Storage Service. And then we are using Lambda to process event notification from that S3 bucket. Next slide. So a serverless strategy enables you to achieve maximum value from the cloud. We are talking about applications that are built with technologies that eliminate the need for you to manage servers, manage scaling, and the high availability management. We are abstracting or lifting all of that from you, and AWS is going to perform that functions. A serverless operational model enables you to dramatically reduce the time spent on things that are in core to your business and allow you to focus on more on product development, application maintenance, and application development, what is the core to your business. Many customers have made the decision to achieve this value through a serverless first strategy, or in some cases, a decision to use serverless service as a preference, unless the use case or workload they choose demand otherwise. And there are some use cases which not all workloaded fit for serverless, but there are workload or that perfectly match for serverless. It's all about how we reimagine the application, and that is all it's all about. So one big reason for growth to this approach is the new role the applications play today. In the earlier days, the application play as a supporting utility. Now, most of the applications are core and center of the business itself. So the serverless first approach enables customers to achieve faster time to market and maximum agility. Next slide, please. Finally, this is all part of a bigger movement. We are in the middle of a paradigm shift. The cloud providers automate and abstract as much as possible to build better products. That is what most businesses are looking for. Okay. So in IT, our ability to do it at a rapid pace has improved significantly with infrastructure as a code, CI/CD pipeline with automated security and compliance, and serverless. So we as leaders and practitioners, we must find a way to emerge from our current state, upgrade our skill set, organization structure to support the business objective. So as you can see here, 70% of this already happening. Next slide, please. So while many customers associate serverless with Lambda, there are actually serverless service across all layers. Serverless services are there at messaging, orchestration, data store, and even at the storage level. While Lambda offers many key advantages to our customers, it's really when all these components we put together surround Lambda, we start to see much bigger benefit, and we see that business benefit really from adopting this new model. Okay. But end of the day, next slide, please. When selecting a modernization path, as we discussed, we need to look about our workload characteristics, but also the question is how much you really want to manage. And then follow up to that, it is about, do you really have the expertise and the effort directed towards those management? Is it that really achieving and helping your business goal? So these decisions and many times are compute centric. Next slide. Let's look at the compute centric little bit more detail. As you can see here, the top two layer, we have Lambda and Fargate. In the case of Lambda, AWS manages the integration, the hardware part of it, networking, the software. Customer just need to develop, maintain the code. That is your application. As we come down, beside the application code, customers need to manage data source integration, in many cases network configuration, based on what you choose in the compute structure. So if you look at the last layer, which is our EC2, then customer is responsible all the way from provisioning, management, scaling, patching, security, all is responsibility of the customer. So with that said, let's look at one of the current customer case study. Thanks, John. We looked at what serverless is. I want to share one of our retail customer who is based in US, benefited by adopting the serverless architecture. The business started quite simple in a traditional hosted and colo. They were hosting their application. Traditional data center model, you have a load balancer, you have web servers, app servers connected to your backend. But as they started adopting more and more into the web sales model, they got more and more online traffic through ads and smart marketing, and growth became a challenge. They couldn't scale as expected, operation become more complex, updates become risky because there is a downtime many times. Further, they had few unexpected outages during one of the peak business season. So they decided to relook at this entire application from a user experience standpoint and from a business standpoint. Next slide. This is an architecture what they adopted. As you can see here, it's all event driven. They had a monolithic, as we discussed earlier. The new design decoupled their entire application and the backend. The architecture you see here is a new hub and spoke design, which is much simpler, the way to operate the events rather than using a point-to-point connections. So here you see how customer uses Event Bridge as to act as a central event hub for Lambda functions, and there are specific functions. They separated all those out as a modular one. So which scale automatically, they don't need to worry about the traffic patterns they are receiving, the peak season. AWS manages all those provisioning part of it. There is no more cache crashes that because the traffic increase, when the traffic increase, the services are dialed up. When the traffic goes down, services are dialed down. So that's the benefit we are seeing. And this is a pattern we are seeing in many of our customers. They are relooking how the applications today work. They are reimagining how they want to design it for the future. So with that, I am concluding the presentation on my side. Me and John are happy to take any questions you may have. Otherwise, I'll hand over to Ron.